Yeah, well, Joe, just to bounce off of that, I know this is the Women in Motorsports show, but we don't always get a chance to talk very much NHRA on the rest of our programming. So I do want to spend a couple minutes here talking about Doug Kalitta. And, like I mentioned, NHRA doesn't get as much coverage here in the States as some other racing series do. So if you want to make a comparison for somebody that's had to wait so long for a championship and come so close so many times, I mean, I would say there really is no great apples to apples comparison, but if you had to make a stretch, this would be like somebody like Mark Martin, who finished second 5 times in the NASCAR Cup Series point standings at the end of the year. This would be like him winning a championship in 2017, 2018. Remember, Doug Kalitta turned 60 years old next year. He has been in this business for so long. He was born into a racing family. His uncle Connie Kalitta, a legend, his cousin Scott, who we tragically lost in a funny car crash in 2008. He was a top fuel champion a couple of times in the 90s. He's been working so hard to emulate that success. This would be like Helio Castroneves, who's finished second in the IndyCar points 4 times before. This would be like him winning a championship 10 years from now and finally getting that weight lifted off of his shoulders that late in his career. Now, in those disciplines, we don't always see drivers, very rarely, if ever, see drivers that competitive into their early 50s, let alone their late 50s. In drag racing, it's a little bit different. I mean, you can look at what John Force has done into his 60s and even his 70s now, still active in the NHRA. But for Doug Kalitta, like you mentioned, Joe, this is an unbelievably popular championship win, I'm sure, for everybody in the NHRA. And for Doug to have been working at this for so long, to come so close so many times, he can now say he's a top fuel champion. It is a much-deserved victory. You do feel bad for Leah Pruett, but to her point that she even mentioned in her own interview, I think Leah's going to come back even stronger next year. This team has raised the bar, raised their expectations over at Tony Stewart Racing for what is possible with that program. And Leah even said as much in her post-race interview. Just the fact that she was in that position to go up against a legend like Doug Kalitta for a championship in Top Fuel says so much about where that program is and the potential that that program has in the future going forward. Now, even though I just mentioned that, we see drag racers stay competitive into their 50s and even their 60s, there's still no denying Doug Kalitta is much closer to the end of his career as a driver than the beginning of it. So, you have to wonder how many more chances was he going to get to be in this position. I think, like I mentioned, an incredibly popular win and really the capstone to an incredible career for Doug Kalitta in Top Fuel to finally be able to say he's a champion. But Leah Pruett's going to be back as well. We can't overlook the tremendous run that she had just to get to that point where it came down to that final championship battle. Ultimately, Doug Kalitta was the one that came out on top. But a great story either way, like you're mentioning, Joe, because I know we were going back and forth in our chat as the final rounds were progressing there. Great stories all around in NHRA. Very well done to that series for the show that they put on Sunday evening.